I think there's nothing worse than not knowing anything about your colleagues. I
Mm.
think you have to have some personal connection. And so when the stories get told or the recipes get shared, it gets people to be able to see each other as just other humans that are coexisting, not just, oh, Todd from accounting.
I'm Dr. Joey Fawcett, coaching you to create a positive work culture that grows people and profits. So, how many trainings have you sat through that started with something like today class, blah, 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 blah? I mean, you were there because you had to be, right? What if those trainings became fun, even entertaining, while also were educational? My guest today is the queen of what she calls edutainment. She blends deep knowledge with some serious fun. Hey, she's a wine educator and founder of Couch Plus Cork, a company that transforms wine tastings into unforgettable, high-touch virtual experiences like corporate events and team building to just because celebrations. She focuses on inclusivity, curiosity, and approachability for Fortune 500 companies, major law firms, and remote teams across the globe. Her tastings spark connection, encourage laughter, and leave participants feeling more confident about wine and each other. She's building a more vibrant, human-first approach to corporate culture, one glass at a time. So grab your wine glass, lean in, listen up, and let's love creating a positive work culture that pairs so nicely with growing people and profits. On this episode of the Work Positive Podcast, I know you're ready to have some fun. What pairs well with Work Positive? Fun. And Nancy Koziol is the queen of fun. Nancy, welcome to the Work Positive Podcast.
Thanks so much, Dr. Joey. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you here. I've been in your part of the world up in Vermont. It's gorgeous up there. I like going in the summer because I grew up in Eastern North Carolina. My blood is about half apple cider vinegar, and so I don't do well in those frigid temperatures. But man, what a beautiful neck of the woods. You have an absolutely amazing, amazing business, and I love the way that you help establish a work culture that both is educational as well as entertaining. Every superhero has an origin story. How did you come up with this idea, Nancy?
Well, that's one of my favorite stories to tell, Dr. Joey. I was in the traditional workforce. I had a great career in labor and employment law, but it pulled my husband and I away from Vermont, which is where we wanted to be. So after about a decade of doing that, we decided I was going to quit my job and move back home. And I said, I'll be a freelance writer because I have an English degree I've never used. So I started writing. Yeah, what do you do with a BA in English is truly
Well, it's better than a
a
BS
question
than poli
that,
sci, right?
right? It just invokes existential dread. And so I said, well, I'll start writing. I've always wanted to be a writer.
That's right.
And somehow, when I started doing these freelance gigs, I kept getting jobs writing about wine. And so eventually I said, I should probably learn something about wine. And I
Uh-huh.
wasn't writing about, the grape to glass journey. I think that we think of when we talk about wine experts. I was writing about wine as an investment, wine fraud, all kinds of kind of wine adjacent topics. But eventually I said, I'm a beer girl. I live in a beer state. I should probably learn a thing or two. So I took a class and I really, really fell in love with it. And then I kept taking classes and kept taking classes and kept taking classes. And finally, I had to start. I'm sure you've seen where people blind taste. They take a wine, they sniff it, they swirl it, they
Yeah.
sip it, and they can tell you what it is and where it came from.
Oh, I hate
I
those
got to the
people.
point. Mhm.
I hate those people because it's like
Yeah,
my taste buds must have been burned off when I was a child or something. Because these people can say,
yeah, no, it
this,
takes
this,
a lot of practice.
it
And
must.
living where I do, I didn't really have the ability to practice. So I formed a tasting club. And
Oh,
in doing that, I realized I was kind of teaching people about wine
uh-huh.
while learning it. And
Mhm.
I thought to myself, I'm really good at this. And I don't love traditional wine education. It's kind of snobby and gatekeepy and competitive. And that's just not who I am. So in May of 2019, I launched Couch and Cork, where I would come to your house sit on your couch, pop open a few bottles, and we would sip and talk and taste and learn together. But then the world shut down, and I was getting all of my income from doing this in people's homes. At that
Mm.
point, I had stopped writing, I wasn't doing anything else. And so I had to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back? And I came up with the idea of trying to do it online with friends. And my friends loved it, and I loved it. And so I took a risk and I pivoted to virtual. And so I think in May of 2020, I did my first official one, and I have not looked back since.
Mm.
I don't think I'll ever look back. It has really, we have found our niche. We have discovered what we're good at. We love doing it, and people love doing it with us. And that's really the story of how I got here.
Yeah, I love the businesses that arise out of adversity, right? It was
Yeah.
a Dr. Peel that said, within every adversity lies the seeds of opportunity. So you really seize that moment. Tell us how it works in a virtual wine tasting, because for some of us that sounds like an oxymoron.
Yeah, it does. And it is. So what we do is we mostly work with corporate clients who
Okay.
say they have a need for bringing people together in a hospitality event. And so my company handles everything. We get the participant information, we look at what states or countries people are in, what wines can everybody get based on where they are geographically, and
Mhm.
then we manage all of the logistics. So we have wine sent to all the participants, we send them a pairing guide, and then we jump on a Zoom together and we sit together for an hour and we learn about wine. We also go beyond wine. We do mixology, charcuterie, cooking classes, but wine is really what started this, and probably about 75% of our education is focused on wine.
Oh, I love that. So you're really creating virtual experiences for people to deepen their connections, and that's got to have an amazing impact, positive impact on the culture.
It does. I don't know anyone who comes to work and at least doesn't smile. You know, we can't fix what's happening outside in the world. We can't make somebody's day better. We
Uh-huh.
can't make somebody's pet not sick or
Yeah.
whatever issue they're dealing with. But we do have a lot of fun because we are so deeply connected and our work really does bring joy. It's hard not to have fun when you are learning with people. You know, curiosity is such a, I think, such an overlooked bit
Mm.
of joy in our lives.
Mhm.
Learning something, making connection, but also asking questions and wondering just really excites people. And it lets you have a little bit of a reprieve from everything else that's going on.
Mm. And it levels that playing field, doesn't it? Because we have to be experts, some of us think, in our in our jobs, right? Got to be an expert in this or that or the other. But it's a level playing field when it comes to learning about wine, right? That's part of the
It is,
experience.
yes. Yes. And every once in a while we'll get someone who will send a message in the chat saying, "Hey, I have a wine certification and I never get to use it." And we always welcome those people to answer questions, share their own observations, you know, join in on the fun because we are trying to eliminate some of the stigma that comes along with wine education.
So you're not trying to make sommeliers out of folks. You're just trying to create an enjoyable experience. So I'm always intrigued by the pairing of food and beverages. Is that a part of your experience?
It is, yes. That's actually when you take a wine class, that's usually chapter two, is
Ah.
pairing wine with food because there is so much science. And
Hmm.
once you have tasted a bad pairing, it'll click. We always tell people we're going to give you the worst possible pairing so that you can see that this really, you can make food and wine sing together. But you actually do have to understand some of the basic gastronomical science, you know, so acid and heat and sweet and how those things play off of each other. And we love teaching people about it too, because for us, it's about how to enjoy wine better. You don't
Mm.
have to be great at it, but we want you to walk away feeling like, okay, I can do this. I can entertain and have a really great wine and cheese pairing.
Oh, I love it. And so what I'm hearing is confidence boosts, self-esteem grows because now I know something I didn't know before, and it's something fun to know and something I tell my friends about. What does that translate into with the team, this newfound confidence and self-esteem?
I think one of the things it really does with my team, which is small, is it empowers them to have fun.
Mm,
Because as soon as they see those little light bulbs go off on the Zoom, as soon as they realize, three, four, five, 10, 20 people
mm,
are leaning in and so excited, it keeps the momentum going. And
mm,
it enables them to feel very empowered in their work and to feel like they are bringing good. I think oftentimes in our jobs, we don't always feel like we're doing great work. We're filling out a form, we're tracking our time, we're handling emails. And I think that my team really gets to see in the span of an hour how happy they've made other people. It
mm,
also encourages them to learn more because
mm,
oftentimes we have a lot of repeat business. And so they're constantly challenging themselves to bring something new to the table, even if they're drinking the same wine or talking on the same topic. There are things
mm.
that they each kind of find on their own and drill down into and make theirs in their tastings, which is really cool to see.
That is cool. It just makes you want to come back for more. Those 20 people that have these experiences, then what's some of the feedback that you get as to how that experience translates back into their teamwork?
So, what we've heard from a lot of people is it makes them want to get to know each other better. It makes them want to share meals together, which is really an interesting thing. I think often when you have a work event, um, people aren't leaving there saying, "Oh, I can't wait to do this with you again." But one thing that's really nice about what we do is people do want to come back together. They want to try that recipe that you were talking about. They
Mm,
want to, drink this wine with you and experiment. We've heard it brings people closer together.
mm,
We've heard that it also has broken down some barriers because while we're not imbibing a ton, people are enjoying a glass or two together. And
mm,
it does lend itself to being a little bit more casual than you might normally be
mm,
in the workplace. And so, if we're building bridges and getting people excited to be together, I think there's nothing worse than not knowing anything about your colleagues. I
mm.
think you have to have some personal connection. And so when the stories get told or the recipes get shared, it gets people to be able to see each other as just other humans that are coexisting, not just, oh, you know, Todd from accounting.
Yeah. I was going to say Bob from accounting, but yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking. It was just I don't know why it's always accounting, but anyway, it's kind of like Johnny in school, right? But yeah, rather than a title identification or a department identification, then it's Todd who prepared that delicious orange glazed pork that paired so well with that wine, and we enjoyed that. Now, you're doing this virtually, and today we know in Work Positive Nation, particularly because I wrote a book called Marco Polo Culture, right? How to connect distributed teams. Man, we're just everywhere. So, how, after your experience, you're doing it virtually, how, after your experience, do you hear stories come rolling back in about how they're adapting across geography to share recipes and wines and things like that?
I think the big thing is people are taking initiative to follow up with each other. And
Ah,
I think it's also making it easier for them to approach difficult conversations. So
hmm.
where before Todd is chasing you to, hand in your billable hours, and every time you see an email from Todd, it's I haven't handed in my billable hours.
Yeah.
Instead, it allows people to have a common ground, a common experience, so that when they check in with you, it's not just this negative of, oh, I didn't do that yet, and I feel shame, or I feel guilt that I'm slowing this person down. It's
Mm,
instead, oh, my friend Todd, or, the guy I had a lot of fun with. So we hear that it helps with communications. it really allows people to see each other in a different way. And
Mm.
something we've also heard is it brings more authenticity to the connection because it's not the outline, you're fleshing out the details. It's not just the little face next to the email. This is a person in my life.
Mm.
And it has enabled people to really connect on a deeper level.
Mm. I love that. Man, don't we all need that today? All the
Mhm.
loneliness statistics that I read, the long tail of isolation from COVID is still very much present.
It's very present, yes.
Yeah. So what you're doing is bringing light and leaven to that whole experience and it really rewires the conversation so that I move away from titles and I move to a context of common experience that we all shared. So, Nancy, when I'm seeking to attract top talent, how do I best communicate that our company has these kinds of experiences like the ones that you bring?
So I think the big thing is really being upfront with people about what to expect in the workplace. So
Mm.
for me, I let people know that we are very much about authenticity. We are not just delivering an experience off of a script. We are getting to know people, we are asking them about their needs, and we're not just offering a wine tasting. We are creating joy. These are very high touch experiences, and they are highly personalized. And a lot
Mm.
of times, when it comes to attracting talent and talking to people, when I'm interviewing them, I'm looking for people who dig deep, ask me questions,
Mm.
who are willing to go off on a tangent. How do they navigate that? Are they able to circle back? And
Mm.
I'm looking at people as if they are on a screen, are they going to keep me engaged? Are they going to be interesting?
Mm.
Can they handle the weird question that inevitably gets thrown at them when someone's two glasses in? Um,
Mhm.
we often joke with people when they're in the waiting room, we'll send a little message like, you can open your wine. But we always wait until the end for that because we have had experiences where people opened it a little too early. And it's fun. It
Yeah.
never, luckily for us, it usually goes very well. But being part of our team really means you have to be resilient and you have to be able to think on your feet.
Mm.
You have to be confident. That is something that I don't think before in other jobs, I always assumed confidence was something you built over doing your work. But to
Mhm.
come in here and do what we do at Couch and Cork, you have to have a little bit of an inflated sense of self and a
Uh,
confidence to say, I'm going to get through this hour no matter what happens, but also I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to reflect on it.
mm.
How do they let the other presenters know, hey, something weird happened? Let me talk you through what happened and how I handled it.
Mhm.
So I do need people who are operating on a very high level when it comes to their people skills, their empathy, and their ability to not get, their knees taken out from them when
Yeah.
somebody does something a
Yeah.
little bit saucy, I
Yeah.
guess is the best word.
When someone does something, because you know they're going
Yes,
to,
because
right?
again, we are mixing alcohol. So we
Ah,
call what we do edutainment. It's
right.
education, but
Uh-huh.
there's a huge entertainment part of this. And
Mm.
so, we kind of walk this line of we have to be highly professional, but also things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's really big for me, authenticity, confidence, and also our values. We have values and we live by them, and there's really no room for people who don't align with them. There is a place for them elsewhere.
Yeah.
Um, but we really need to support both professionalism and humanity. And I
Mm.
think that, it's very important that people remember we are highly professional and highly human. And that can
Mm.
feel like it's in conflict with each other.
Yeah, well, holding those two in creative tension in our minds really does take a higher level of thinking, but it takes a lot of grace too, right? But in bringing that level of transparency and talking about your team that way and authenticity, that must set the people having the experience free to do the same things. So I guess we can say, hey, the Acme Corporation has Couch and Cork in every year, and here's the kinds of things we do, and here's the kind of experiences we have that deepen our connections on that human level so that we can work more productively and innovate and create more. I love that. And so I'm just taking a leap here into retention. I'm assuming these kinds of events, and I prefer to call them experiences, these kinds of experiences really do help top talent see in a company, hey, we're committed to you. We're investing in Couch and Cork to come in. We want you to deepen your relationships so that you're here for a while. Is that part of the outgrowth of a Couch and Cork experience?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you saying my team, like my staff at
The,
Couch and
the
Cork,
companies
or
that you go in to work for, the retention level for them because they've had these kinds of experiences.
yeah, so we do hear back about people kind of embracing Couch and Cork as almost part of their company,
Mm,
because it becomes a thing. Most of our clients use us at least quarterly.
mm,
And so we almost become part of the team. It is an expected thing. And they do say that they value that as part of their job, that they know that they can count on quarterly having some sort of experience with us where either we're facilitating or they're facilitating and we're supporting it, and that it's become an important part of their job. Some people do retreats, some people do lock-ins where they spend a day in a conference room working together. And the
mhm.
companies we work with often say, we view Couch and Cork as part of our internal process.
Sweet. Yeah, that's amazing. And by investing in the relationships and deepening those connections in these companies, I can easily see how this sort of experience would launch a day of planning or something like that and really set the tone and the pace for some amazing results.
Absolutely.
So, what are some of the challenges you see you've experienced in corporations who maybe think they want to have this kind of experience but aren't really equipped yet to take that step?
I think one of the biggest challenges, and I wish it was something scandalous, it's not. I think it's thinking that they can do it themselves. I
Mm,
often will hear from people who say, "Oh, we have virtual events at our company." Okay, if you have a once a month Friday Zoom happy hour, that is not a virtual event or a virtual experience.
mm,
That is saying we're all going to jump on at 5, we're all going to pour our drinks. And the same people who monopolize the conversation are going to monopolize the conversation. The same people who drink too much at the in-person work happy hour are going to drink too much on the the virtual happy hour. There are
yeah.
still going to be issues. There's going to maybe be that kind of passive aggression or whatever other communication issues that there
Mm,
are in the workplace, because
mm,
essentially you're just extending the workday over Zoom.
mm,
The challenge is understanding that there are people out there, us, of course, who have really figured out what makes these experiences magical, what makes them safe, what
mm,
makes them something people want to come to, and allow people to kind of let go of the other stuff. Because
mm.
it's very difficult to say, we're doing a Zoom happy hour and not let go of the other stuff. Part of it too is the idea of you have a stranger in the room. They don't know me or Eva or Casey or Kaya or Jamie or whoever is presenting these wines to them. And so, in some ways, they have to behave a little bit better. And there's more room for the good stuff to happen when they're
Mm.
doing that instead of just the typical Friday, 5 o'clock Zoom drink-a-thon. So the challenge really is getting people to realize that, just like if you planned a staff meeting saying we're just having everybody come into the room, planning a virtual experience is much the same. You need an agenda, it has to be timed out. There needs to be practice. Somebody who knows what they're doing has to handle the logistics. And you need to have presenters that are engaging and can bring people in to have conversation versus just talk at them.
I love it. Let me ask you a question. What if the key to growing your work culture hides in plain sight? Take the free Work Positive Culture Assessment to discover it. Get insights in less than 4 minutes that transform your culture so you grow people and profits. You just answer 13 simple questions and discover your culture stage, strengths, and personalized next steps. Get your free aha culture moment at workpositive.today. Go to workpositive.today right now. Nancy Koziol is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. In the show notes, you'll find couchandcork.com, which we've referenced several times now. And we'll talk a little bit more about what you'll find there in just a few moments. So if the connection, the deepening of connection that makes for better, more productive work, right, and creates a more positive cultures there, what are some of the other challenges you've seen when companies invite you in, but there's like a surface level interaction and you're trying to take them deeper, but they're somewhat resistant to that? What are the challenges they're experiencing?
I think a big part of the challenges people face is letting somebody else do the thing that they think they should be doing.
Oh,
So I see this with HR or with hospitality events managers, where they think, well, this is my job. And if I let you do it and you do it better than I did, or you do it quicker than I did, or you do it cheaper than I did, or
mm.
they had more fun when you did it, there's this, this fear. I think we've all heard of gatekeeping in the sense of, I am the only person who can do my job. And
Mm.
so for us, when we see that pushback, when we see that challenge, but we can tell they're kind of into the idea, we explain to them that our job is to let you do your job better. It's still your event. It still has your name on it. We're still going to run everything by you, but let us do it so that it's better than you could ever do, because you have more important things to worry about. An HR director has far more to think about in a day to day. And I say this as someone with an experience in labor and employment law,
Sure.
than worrying if FedEx is getting everybody's wine to them. But part of what we do is hours a day of just tracking where every shipment is. And if you want the event to go off without a hitch, that's the kind of very repetitive, menial, mind-numbing work that you have to do. And people don't want to do that. It's boring. It gets old really fast. It's easy to make mistakes. So
Yeah.
what we try to do is show people you're not relinquishing anything, and you're going to look great for doing this. And
Mm.
this is going to become attached to your department or your team.
Mm.
It's simply letting us do it in the way that it actually works, because we are experts in this. You
Mm.
still get to be an expert in your thing. And now you're even more of an expert because you've learned the challenge that I think every business faces, which is delegation.
Oh,
Just find who can do it and empower them to do it. And both of you will walk away feeling better. We love doing it. We love the nitty gritty,
mm.
sitting around tracking and looking at the map and trying to decide if it's going to get there on time. But then they don't have to deal with that, and they can worry
Yeah.
about the other stuff.
Yeah, so it's more of a partnership, but it makes perfect sense when you're talking about people who are afraid you're going to do my job better than I can do it, and you're going to show me up. But I hear you saying it's more service. Let me partner with you. Let me come alongside you and create an even better experience so you can take your hand off the wheel and just let us run it for you. Who doesn't want that? Well, micromanagers and insecure people, and so I love that. So just release the wheel and let Nancy Koziol and her team drive for you. That's absolutely amazing. Nancy, we mentioned a moment ago your website, couchandcork.com. I got to ask you, where'd you get the name?
Where did we get the name? Well, I am notoriously terrible at naming things.
Oh,
It
are
has
you?
been a lifelong joke that I cannot name anything. I have a dog named Spreadsheet. Um, I, I cannot name anything. So when I wanted, yeah, a dog named Spreadsheet.
I'm trying to get my head wrapped around that one. There's a story.
My husband's in finance, which is pretty much the story.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
but when it came time to when I came up with this business idea and I was like, what should I do? I had a friend in my community who's also an entrepreneur, woman solopreneur, and she can name anything in 3 seconds. She just
Oh,
always has a
wow.
better name for everything.
Hmm.
So I texted her and I was like, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm actually in a car, in a van with six of my girlfriends going on our annual beach trip." And I said, "Oh," I said, "So you've got a brain trust there?" And she said, "Yes." Said, "I think I'm ready to make this a business.
Timing is
What
everything.
should I name it?" And she knew what I had been doing. We had been kind of masterminding together and working on both of our businesses independently. And she started texting me just a list of what everybody was shouting out. And Couch and Cork was about 60% of the way into a pretty long list, but something about, I was just like, well, that's it. That is the name. And for a long time, I kept calling it Cork and Couch, but Couch and Cork just kind of flows a little better.
It really
And
does.
it's funny now that, we've moved away from couches. We don't really meet in person. I have a few every year where I'll go and do things in person, but usually in a boardroom, not in a living room. But I don't think I'll ever change the name. I think
Oh,
that
no.
it truly embodies the journey. It truly embodies what we do, even though there are no couches involved, and we do plenty of drinks that don't have corks in them.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I
it's part
love
of
it.
the story.
So when Work Positive Nation goes to couchandcork.com, what will we find?
So our website is very simple. There's some videos that kind of show the vibe. I know vibe is a very overused word these days, but we really are a vibe, as the kids would say, and it shows that off.
Not quite as bad
And
as
there's a
pivot, but
description
anyway.
of there's descriptions of what we do, and then everybody has their own bio page, so you can kind of get to know us. Traditionally, our website is really just a place for people to get to us. We really like engaging in conversation, be it over email or on the phone or on a Zoom. So most information kind of happens in those conversations. But there is a pretty good idea on the website of who we are. You can sign up for our newsletter, which we only send out quarterly. We don't like to inundate people's emails. And,
Right.
kind of here's where we're going to be, here's what we're doing, here's a recipe we can't stop making and the wine that we're pairing it with.
Uh-huh.
But that's really, the website is really just the place, our kind of landing space on the interwebs, but encouraging people to get in touch.
I love it. I love it. Couchandcork.com. The link to that is in the show notes, Work Positive Nation, as we do for all of our guests. So just go there and click it when you get a second. Her LinkedIn profile URL is there as well. Great place to message her. And then there's also a link to a book that Nancy wrote called The Joy of Brewing Cider Mead and Herbal Wine. And it takes you over to Amazon where you can get your Kindle copy over there. So, Nancy Koziel, Work Positive Nation always wants to know from my guests, so I've got to ask you if there's one thing you would recommend, a bit of advice that you would give to Work Positive Nation, one thing that they can do starting today to create the kind of positive work culture we're talking about, what would it be?
I think the one thing that I would tell people to do to transform their work culture um, is around work-life balance. That is something we hear so much that our employers and our colleagues value work-life balance. And so I think if you say that you care about work-life balance, that you should live that. You should ask people how their weekends were instead of when they walk in on Monday morning, asking them immediately about work. I think you should try as much as possible to not send emails on weekends. I am a firm believer that when you work with people, no matter what the mission or the vision of the business is, we are all people first. And we need to remember that. You can have high standards. I have insanely high standards at Couch and Cork, and everybody knows it. But that does not come at the expense of making people feel badly or violating boundaries or ever treating people in a way that I wouldn't want to be treated. And so I think a big thing is if we're going to use that, if we're going to say we value work life balance, we value you as people, we need to always do everything in our business in a people first way.
I love it. Nancy Koziol is my guest. Go right now to couchandcork.com and discover yourself some amazing opportunities for you to engage with Nancy and her team. Nancy, I'm better for this conversation, and I'm so grateful that you came on the Work Positive podcast today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're so welcome, Dr. Joey, and thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
I'm so grateful you joined our conversation about creating positive work cultures that grow people and profits. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn today. Just search for Dr. Joey Fawcett, or you can click the link in your show notes. When you send your connection request, mention you're a Work Positive podcast listener, because I want to give you a free digital copy of my Work Positive Team Edition book. It's a $19.95 value, but I want to share it with you free because it contains practical strategies that I personally use with clients to transform toxic work environments into thriving cultures. We explore in that book how to create a positive work culture, and we do so again in every episode of this podcast. Our LinkedIn connection allows you and me to directly talk about your specific challenges, so feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I personally read and respond to all those messages because I genuinely care about your work positive success. So go to LinkedIn and let's connect. Remember to mention you're a podcast listener to receive your free Work Positive Team Edition book. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of the Work Positive Podcast.